Dave, many years ago, I lived near Champaign-Urbana. And one of the things that I did is I worked a little bit north of Champaign-Urbana in this church. And my role was, well, education, religious education. And one of the things that I wanted to do is to expose many of the children that I worked with just to different perspectives. So we went to different organizations, different churches, different religious faiths. And one of those was a synagogue. And so we went to the synagogue, and the rabbi gave us a tour and kind of explained about, in terms of, what's in a synagogue. And so as we were getting to ready to leave, I, of course, remember from my own background as a seminary graduate, I asked the rabbi this question. I said, "Rabbi, would you tell us a story?" And, he paused and he said, "Of course." And so he told this story, and he said that he heard it from Elie Wiesel. And the story went like this, that there was a very difficult and dark time in the world where there was, again, wars and confusion and just very, very difficult times. And there was one rabbi who was very much aware of this and began looking through the Torah and again some of the literature and wisdom and the rabbi's tradition, and discovered that there was this way to kind of work with it. And it was to go to a particular forest, to light a candle, and to say a prayer. And so the rabbi went to the forest and lit the candle and said a prayer. And lo and behold, believe it or not, the world began to shift in a much more amenable and positive way. Now, another millennium or so passed, world again in this same, terrible place. Wars and starvation, injustice, we could go on and on. And the rabbi at that point remembered something. And so again, took to reading again some of the literature, wisdom literature, and discovered that there was a forest, but he couldn't really tell which forest, but knew about the candle and knew about the prayer. And lo and behold, the rabbi did this, and it was enough. And the world kind of then shifted back, and again, more positive. And so again, another millennial or so, and I'm going to not make this too long, but you know where I'm headed. Again, the world just in a terrible place, political systems, injustice, all of that again. And again, this rabbi was very concerned and did not know the forest, did not know at all about the candle, had no idea what the prayer was, but he knew the story. And that was enough. And so the question that we want to raise is, what is the story for us, for all of us today? What is that story? And I would love to hear your wisdom on that. But maybe before we get to that, my name is Chris Smith. And part of my role is, of course, I'm interested in stories. By training, I'm a marriage and family counselor, a mindfulness teacher, a person who has been working with ulcerative colitis, written a book. I have one with the formatter right now, so hopefully that will be published this upcoming year. Dave, introduce yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I'm Dave Kopaz. I'm a psychiatrist, integrative medicine doctor, yoga and meditation instructor, author, artist, poet, friend of Chris Smith, what else? Podcaster. That's probably enough. And this is the Becoming a True Human podcast. And this is a special day. We welcome you here. This is the first podcast of season 2. We're calling it season 2. It just feels like it should be season 2, right, Chris? It's the new
Yes.
year. This is actually podcast number 14. I think we'll keep the numbers going, rather than starting again each year. But this is season 2. We're going to have a little bit of a new format. So Chris and I will do our thing every third episode. Every second episode, we're going to bring on a special guest, one of our whole health friends from the whole health program through the VA. We know people all over the country who are just tremendous healers, and we'd like to bring them in and get their voice into this conversation. And then the third episode, every third episode, we'll bring in an outside guest, and we'll kind of have a dialogue and interview with them. And then the fourth one, again, it'll just be Chris and I again. So we'll just kind of mix it up a little bit that way and see how that goes this year. So back to your question, Chris, of, what is the story that is enough? I don't know if you're going to like this. In fact, I know you're not going to like this, but Bertolt Brecht once was asked if there would be singing in the dark times. And he said, yes, there will be singing about the dark times. There's a kind of existentialist sort of positive life force in that, but you may not find. Do you find that uplifting or inspiring?
Not really. I mean, I was hoping for a little bit more than that, Dave.
Okay, yeah. So, but then I think about. Well, actually, I saw Elie Wiesel speak one time at University of Illinois when I was in residency there. He came and spoke. And that was a really profound experience to see him in person. And I suppose he's got a story. His story is witnessing. My mentor, Steve Wine, put together like a trauma and witnessing program and brought in speakers from all over. And we would talk to people from the science perspective, but also the humanities perspective, people who are bearing witness. And so an answer to that question could be, is bearing witness enough? Is being a witnessing professional, as Robert J. Lifton talks about, or, Parker Palmer talking about the role of witnessing that people have to listen to their own heart and respond from their heart. So in a way, I guess, there's a narrative. Okay, here's where we'll go. Here's the positive thing. So in Walking the Medicine Wheel with Joseph Rael, we're writing a book about trauma and PTSD. And so I'm meeting with Joseph, trying to figure out how to work with him. It was the first time we were working together and writing. He'd tell me all this interesting stuff, some of it really far out. And so I just write and write and write. I send the book to the publisher, and the publisher says, this is interesting, but where's the book about PTSD? And I was like, oh, dang, I forgot. I lost track of it. Joseph went off on a tangent. So then I went back and refocused everything. And then Joseph called me one day. I was walking out of the VA after work. And he said, I had a dream or a vision that God holds back a place of goodness in our hearts, no matter what we've done, no matter what's been done to us. There's a held back place of goodness in our hearts. And all of a sudden, well, my first thought was, that's fantastic. This is great for the book. My second thought was, why didn't you tell me that at the beginning of the book instead of when we're trying to send it to the publisher? So really quickly, I did this rapid fire, looking through a bunch of different trauma theorists about something as far as just the inner humanity or the core humanity, that no matter what's happened, you have it to begin with, and that you don't really lose it. It just gets covered up. So that place of goodness gets held back. And then the recovery work is not necessarily getting something you don't have. It's uncovering something that you do have, like your keys. You lost your keys somewhere, they're in the house. You just need to figure out how to find them.
You know, in a,
How's that? Is that more
yeah,
optimistic? Does that meet your criteria of what you're hoping for?
not yet, but
No.
we got a few more minutes here, maybe. And I'm
Okay.
joking, of course.
Uh,
Yesterday, I was being interviewed by a former colleague of
mm,
ours, and we were talking about stories, which is how we began today.
mm,
And one of the things that came up for me that I've been thinking about, just through writing and my own experience,
mhm,
is that we have, and I think it speaks to what you were just talking about, that part that's held back. At least within my life, I know that there are stories that I will say are more positive.
mhm,
You know, I wrote a book. I'm going to publish another one. I might have, shared some of my Kringle this year during the holidays with someone. And then there are these other stories that are equally present.
mhm,
That who am I to write a book, and why didn't I share more of my Kringle with others? And
mhm.
you
How come
know,
you're not making any money from your book?
how come, right? And one of the things I had thought about for a while is, well, what are ways to promote more of the good, and
Mhm,
maybe there's something to that. And then lately I've been thinking about this idea of holding both stories. That
mhm,
that not necessarily of trying to get rid of some of these other stories, but maybe developing a better relationship with them. And
yeah.
so part of what I've been thinking about is, how do I hold both? And that doesn't mean that I don't know what it means, but it this idea of holding both, because I feel like there's
Sounds
some
like
value.
another book.
Yeah, right. That
Uh-huh.
this part of me that I struggle with
Mhm,
often informs the part of me that wants to do and be a better person in this world. That through
mhm,
this more negative, at times rejecting part, helps me to see a little more clearly the person I
mhm,
want to be. And so there was part of me that has been thinking about, is it possible to hold both of these,
uh-huh.
allowing them to inform one another, and hopefully that allows me to step forward in the life and the time that I have to hopefully do as much good as I'm able.
Yeah. Chris, I was thinking about something kind of related to this about our work together, and thinking about, how are we similar? How are we different? How do we complement each other? And so I started to think about, if we've got the proverbial glass. Sorry, it's a little less than half full, but that's the times we live in. But we'll accept it. It's about, I would say there's about 3/8 of a cup of coffee in here
Okay.
left yet. Let's say it's half full. In the top half of the glass, I'm a pessimist to begin with, and then I'm an optimist. As like I really get like pushed. The optimism is something that is almost a response to the challenge. But my initial feeling is more of a pessimism of like, oh my God, the healthcare system, my health, this, that, the other thing, the country, all this stuff. I'm easy for me to get caught up in the pessimism. But in the bottom half of the glass, I'm optimistic on top and pessimistic only as things get a little deeper. Um, but then for me, I think then there's no bottom to the glass. So I go back and forth and back and forth. And so that's a little bit of this. How do you hold both of these? Can you hold both at the same time? Or is it that there's different layers? And then for you, I was thinking you seem like more of an optimist on top and a pessimist underneath, like you always are kind of bright and cheery, it seems like, and have a good outlook, and you're a well-balanced, non-neurotic human being. Um, until I get to know you a little bit better. And then I see, this other thing, down there. And so I wondered, maybe in the bottom half of the glass, you start out as a pessimist, and then you get to an optimist when things get really, really tough. I don't know. What do you think about that one?
Well, you're the psychiatrist here, and so I can't help but to kind of nod to that.
Hmm. That's it.
That's it. I mean,
Oh,
I
gee
mean,
whiz. Huh.
I mean that could be true. That could be true, but I think you would see it maybe more than I would.
Yeah. And maybe other people, yeah, I mean, that might be something that other people don't see, the sort of what goes on inside of these times, these inner times of pessimism, of like, the dark night of the soul type of thing, where you go through these times and you feel like the world is beyond hope. Well, I wrote you that piece. How'd you like the end of that piece where I was talking about my journey through the healthcare system, and then I talked about you know democracy in this country and democracy in the world, and the whether or not humanity is going to survive, and what's going to happen with the environment of but then the thing was, it was like pessimistic, and then I said, but the earth, I think, will survive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
So there was that optimism at the bottom.
I mean, it wasn't much optimism. I mean, I mean, it was a slither. It was like that 1/8 of coffee in your cup right now,
Yeah,
kind of optimism. I'm hoping for a little bit more than that.
That's not enough for you.
I feel like there could be a little bit more there, Dave.
Okay, I got a story. I can't remember the name of this one. It's a Philip K. Dick short story. And in this story, the backstory of it is the ants and spiders are actually aliens from other planets. And the ants are the good guys. They're trying to help the humans. And the spiders are the bad guys. They're trying to kill the humans. And at one point, the protagonist of the story is in the basement with a bunch of ants, and the spiders have surrounded the place, and he can hear them sort of breaking in through, the different entry points in the house, and they're getting closer and closer to the basement. And an ant turns to the guy and says, "I think we can save you." And the guy's like, "Oh, thank goodness. I thought we were goners." And the ant says, "Sorry, I meant you as humanity, not you as a person."
Just a reflection, not on that great story, but I'm thinking of our culture and our world at this time, and it feels like more pressure, and maybe part of that is through media, but it certainly feels like water that's boiling.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if that boiling pushes some of us toward one side to the other, more pessimistic or more optimistic. I don't know, but I just feel like there's this cultural piece too in our world, which makes it really difficult to, at least for me, to think about what is that story? What is that story that gives us hope? A number of years ago, we met one of my wife's cousins at the grocery store. He, older Italian, Sicilian man. And what I loved about him is he always went to all the different grocery stores to figure out, where was the cheapest, piece of fruit or chicken or whatever he was looking for. But one of the things that he said that reminds me a little bit of our discussion about what is the story now is, again, thinking of his culture and tradition. He was saying that for him, this idea of sitting around a table and having dinner together is important. And he was worried that the younger generation was not buying into some of this tradition from his perspective. And he was saying that the importance of sitting around the table is hearing the stories from your relatives and your relatives' relatives. And he was saying that those stories can be a way to navigate, the life that people are presented with today, both in terms of ways that have been successful and ways that have failed miserably. But I'll never forget that conversation because it reminds me of what we're doing right now as a potential solution for this question of what is the story. Maybe it begins with just conversation without scripts like what we do. Maybe it just, maybe it begins with just conversations, and maybe through those conversations, like what's happening, you're pulling from readings from your own history, from your knowledge as a psychiatrist about me, which I'm still not sure if that's correct. But anyway, so that is another, thought that I have about sort of this
Yeah,
question posing today.
of just doing something that I've been thinking about this a lot. There's neuroscience research looking at the distinction between empathy and compassion. And so, you can define these a lot of different ways, and I've seen them sometimes, defined one way or the other, even seemingly opposite. But for the study, they talked about empathy as feeling with somebody who's suffering, and compassion as having empathy plus action. And they found that there's actually different brain patterns, that when you have empathy for somebody, your pain circuits light up in your brain. When you have compassion, your reward circuits light up in your brain. And to me, I take this to mean if you can do something, anything, any kind of action, even if it's an action in the mental or spiritual plane, like saying a loving kindness prayer for somebody, or bearing witness for someone. You don't change what they've been through, but you are there. They're not alone, and you're with them. And so doing that positive thing changes something in your brain. So you don't leave going, oh my God, I can't believe how bad off that is. The world's a terrible place. But you leave going, oh man, the world is a terrible place. But we just shared this human moment that transcends whatever bad thing is going on right now. That the human capacity to care and have compassion is the thing that's always enough, no matter what happens. If you've got other people, as long as you've got your soul, yourself, the ability to care for others, you still have your humanity. If you lose that, then you start to be an object amongst a world of objects.
You reminded me where we started today with the rabbi. I mean, the rabbi obviously was in tune to his or her world.
Mm-hmm.
And the rabbi could have just simply felt
Mm.
how horrible it is, and certainly did to some degree. But then the rabbi took it another step, right? Went to kind of search through the Torah or some of the wisdom traditions from that tradition, and then took it again with a particular prayer. So he did something with a particular forest, and again at the candle part. So
Yeah.
I mean, I think that to me is the hopeful part of that story. Is it really is an invitation to kind of really what you're saying is to allow oneself to be a part of the world, to feel the world, and then to do one's own reflection and conversation, kind of like what we're doing.
Yeah.
Begin to think, what are the steps that are important for me in my life to take? Like yours. Yours obviously is lecturing. It's writing fantastic books. It's working with people. I mean, those are the ways, at least some of the ways that I know that you go about that.
Yeah. Yeah. So going back to that story, the light, to have the light of insight or knowledge, to go back into nature, the forest, and then to have a prayer, to speak, that's to do something. And you imagine each of those things, they're in action. You're lighting the candle, you're going into the forest, which is an action, and then you're speaking, you're going into your heart and speaking something. And that's enough. And it also in the story, it's enough if you just remember 2 out of 3 or 1 out of the 3, or even if you don't remember any of those actions, you can take an action, which is to tell the story that at one time people knew how to take action to set the world right again, or to remake the world. What is that saying? The Hebrew saying, tikkun olam, or something like that, of remaking the world. And so telling the story in a way is shifting your brain from the pain circuit into the reward circuit, even if you're not doing an earth-shattering physical action. It's enough to tip the balance within one mind to shift from pessimism to optimism, or to reignite the candle of the heart, to find the held back place of goodness of the heart, or to reignite the candle of the soul.
Yeah. I'm also thinking, Dave, this idea of going to the forest, just really taking that one piece.
Mm-hmm.
There has been a part of me, particularly over the last decade, that has intentionally spent more time in nature. And I'm always coming away with just observing nature of how to go about being a human being in this world.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
So I think there's some wisdom with this idea of in
Mm-hmm.
nature. I've had this idea, and I'm a little
Do you have a
embarrassed.
poem?
I don't, but I have a
I do.
story.
Yeah, okay. Tell the story while I'm looking up the
I
poem.
have this. It's a little embarrassing, but I had an idea for a book that I've started on. I don't know if I'm going to finish it. We'll see. But
Mm-hmm.
there's a particular pine tree that we have in our yard. It's an eastern white pine.
Hmm.
And my son brought it home when he was in pre-4
Oh,
kindergarten.
wow.
And it was maybe 12 inches.
Mm-hmm.
And we put it in the yard and it started growing. We moved it and it's growing now. It's probably 30 feet tall.
Hmm.
And there's something about that tree that has drawn me to be very interested in. So I had this idea for a book for each month to spend, time with just sitting
Mm-hmm.
out with the tree and really trying to learn from the tree how it experiences each different month.
Mm-hmm.
What are the
Yeah.
things I notice about the tree?
Mm-hmm.
And what are the things? So, this month, it's been a bit cold and it's been a bit
Mm-hmm.
warm, but this idea that, the tree just stands,
Right.
whether cloudy, whether, and then, I know later on, I've seen this in earlier this year, is underneath this tree when it's warm is a colony of ants.
Mm.
And so there's this symbiotic relationship
Mm-hmm.
between the tree and the insects getting at ants. I know you made that reference earlier.
Right.
They
Mm-hmm.
seem to be okay to me.
Yeah.
But anyway, just this whole aspect of, for
Mm-hmm.
me, this interest of really kind of being more close, more observant of
Mm-hmm.
nature, and that it just always seems to have something to teach.
Yeah. Here's a story that I tell myself. Yeah, I know you can determine of how true something like this is or whether it's a story. But I came on this idea of sentinel trees, that in the forest, there are these trees that seem to have more consciousness than other trees or character. Sometimes they're really bent up or misshapen, but they're old and ancient. And you look at them and you're just like, oh, man, what wisdom this tree has. And so, when I go in the forest, I kind of look for those trees and I'll put my hand on them and just spend some time with them. So I'm wondering, maybe this is a sentinel tree that is in training, and you're listening to this tree and it's telling you a story.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a poem. I think we've done this one before. David Wagner.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Called Lost. Stand still. The trees ahead and the bushes beside you are not lost. Wherever you are is called here, and you must treat it as a powerful stranger, must ask permission to know it and be known. The forest breathes. Listen. It answers. I have made this place around you. If you leave it, you may come back again saying, here. No two trees are the same to raven. No two branches are the same to wren. If what a tree or bush does is lost on you, you are surely lost. Stand still. The forest knows where you are. You must let it find you.
Hmm. It's a great poem.
Yeah, yeah. That's something, maybe that's a story, but there's times where I'll go back and sit, in Seattle, I had a little hidden place, a nook. I had a stool that was back behind a holly bush that had kind of overgrown. And we lived there for a little while before I realized there's like a little tiny space back there, perfect for a stool meditation place, even though it was a very urban place. And here, I'm still kind of trying to find it. I might plant some trees to kind of create it, but I go in the backyard and I sit and I look at the trees and I look at the sky and I just listen to things. Um, and I think about, from Joseph Rael's perspective, Mother Earth and Father Sky. And I think about the directions and the sounds, that he teaches of the directions, the A, E, O, U for east, south, west, north, and center. And I think about how the earth itself is an element, and the air is an element, and water is an element, and fire is an element, and how all of these come together within myself. And I'm this mixture of earth and air and water and fire. And I feel the kinship, the connection. It's like listening to a story of the ancestors, like sitting around the kitchen table. So sitting in the forest may be a way of sitting around the kitchen table before it's been created out of the wood of the trees. Yeah.
I was actually making a note. That was the very thought, that maybe nature is the kitchen table.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And part of what story we might be able to lean into could very well be spending time in that little
Mm-hmm.
nook or
Mm-hmm.
nook or near pine trees or
Yeah.
in nature. And
Mm-hmm.
like the poem of David Wagner, this is a time maybe that many of us feel lost.
Yeah.
And it raises this question of what are those places that we might spend more time with to help us to kind of reacclimate to firmer ground.
Yeah. Yeah. We're going to do the other thing.
What was the other thing?
The text you sent me.
I've sent you a lot of text.
Well, no, this one was, I was in a group of people.
Oh.
That one. I've been working on this piece. It could be an intro story for our podcast.
Yeah.
That one.
Yeah,
that
sure.
other thing. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thanks for reminding me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I have been this week and last week working on a story that interested me. For a number of years, I was part of a very small group of people that we met for 2 hours every week. For me, for close to 15 years.
Mm.
And so, and I'll just say that it was a group that, sort of the major focus was meditation. And during one of those meetings, one of those persons in that group verbally kind of attacked me. And I was surprised. And you know me to know that it's not beyond me to say things that could get me into trouble.
Mm-hmm.
But to this day, I have no idea what I did or said that brought that about.
Mm-hmm.
But there was one thing that for me cut a little bit deeper. And that was no one in the group stepped in during that moment to pause or to just say time out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that is what really hurt. And that's what I ended up writing mostly about, is this group not stepping in at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And so it got me thinking about how, when pain or whatever you want to call it is not witnessed,
Mm-hmm.
or that it grows deeper. And it just made me think in my own life, situations that I've been in that I have not spoken up or taken some action, and how that often will allow the pain even to go settle deeper.
Yeah.
And to be honest, it also, with some of the things that are going on in our country and our world now, I mean, just happens that I'm writing about this at a time where that particular issue is unfortunately very poignant. So it just makes me think about this question of what are ways that I can intervene or step up, in situations that really invite one to step up to and respond to, rather
Yeah.
than being just silent.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. I know from in the medical system too, experiences I've had where I felt like my pain wasn't witnessed. And not only that, where it was dismissed or maybe even, um, used against me somehow. I just read The Invisible Kingdom by Megan O'Rourke, and she talks about her journey and, kind of the difficulties of finding healthcare professionals who believe her about the symptoms she's having, even when they don't show up on lab values. And all, discussion of all the different types of complex illnesses, long COVID being one that was coming up then, of like, how do we understand long COVID when it seems like the person should be healthy when we look at their labs?
Right.
And then we've got the choice as doctors, we have the choice to say, do we believe the person or do we believe the labs? And so often, because doctors are sort of indoctrinated into this biomedical view of health and illness, and also because they're time pressured and rushed and they don't have time to enter into the complexity, or they don't have time to go into the witnessing, or they're so burned out that they can't bear to spare the compassion for somebody. And so they retreat behind professionalism and time pressure and medical brush-offs. I've had people who say, "Oh, that's just inflammatory infiltrate," and I'm like, "Oh, sorry, I brought that up. That's just inflammatory infiltrate." And afterwards, I thought, "Well, inflammatory infiltrate, isn't that a problem?" Just because you give it a fancy word, does that mean that it's not a problem? So,
I
yeah.
don't. Yeah, it's one of those things where I don't have a solution.
Hmm.
All I think now, and particularly writing this, is just
Hmm.
to name that this is something that can happen,
The
and it can
dynamic.
and
Yeah.
it can
Hmm.
happen in places that we least expect. I mean, it could happen
Hmm.
in families. It
Yep.
can happen in groups of people that you know well,
Hmm.
and yeah, that it's a possibility. So
Yeah.
I'm not saying it as a. I don't want to come across as saying that it's a negative thing. I think it's something that happens, but can we be
Hmm.
ready, all of us, to respond in the
Right.
moments where we're maybe asked to respond,
Hmm.
whatever that might be, that's appropriate.
Mm.
Um, and that's sort of what came
Yeah.
up for me is what are ways that I might respond in
Hmm.
the world that I am now, and not
Yeah.
just be silent.
Yeah.
So it can
That
happen,
right.
like I say, it can happen in
Hmm.
one's own health
Yeah.
and the medical system,
Hmm.
healthcare system. It can happen in groups that we're part of.
Right.
So you were going to say
Yeah.
something.
Oh, just about scapegoating, common group dynamic comes from, I read a story one time that the word scapegoat came from, I think it was Hebraic culture, that there was an annual event where everyone in the community would come. They tied a goat to like a stake in the center of the community in the town square or whatever, and everyone would heap all the abuse on this goat. Like, you burned down my house. You made me, get sick and lose my foot. You made me do this. And then they would chase the goat out of the town. Um, and that it had almost like a ritual magical effect of people thought that if you put the evil on the goat, the bad things on the goat, and chased it away, that the goodness would be left and you'd gotten rid of the bad somehow. Uh, but it's a very common dynamic, and we see it right now in the country of who are the good people and who are the bad people.
Yeah,
And um, and then it's like once you have called somebody a bad person, it seems to justify and perhaps even demand that you do something against the bad person, and the bad person deserves it. The bad person loses their humanity and becomes a scapegoat.
yeah,
And so that dynamic is really powerful. And I had a experience this week where I was talking to a patient, and I'd had several patients who were saying, "Oh my God, what's going on in this country? I just can't believe it. It's just, I'm so worried about it." And then they would talk about, kind of a more leftist view of the world, And then I had a patient who started off, I thought I knew where it was going. And then she said, "Can you believe it? This Trump derangement syndrome that the Democrats have, he's just trying to, protect us. He's just trying to do a good job. He's just trying to help us against the bad people, these socialists and communists. Can you believe them?" And I was like, whoa, I thought I was empathizing, or kind of like, I see where this is going. And then I'm like, how am I going to balance this to be, to bear witness to her pain, but also not to turn a therapy session into a political session. And I mean, the thing that I tend to do there is just to say, this polarization is so extreme. Both sides think that they're completely right, and both sides are listening to different news sources, and to try and just empathize with the split rather than saying, should we choose one side of the split or the other. But it makes, afterwards, I despair more, because I'm like, how in the world are we ever going to bridge this split?
Well, we need to go to the forest. We need to light a candle.
Yeah.
And we need to say a prayer. And so where I want to go with that is just taking off your question is where, the world is a mess. What do we do? And I think, again, this story that we started with is, what are some things that we can return to, whether it's nature, whether it's prayer, whether it's lighting a candle, having a conversation. But I think we're all susceptible to this, particularly now. And this other piece, that we're talking about, of actions that we can take, that at least help balance, perhaps, help us to see more clearly. How do you like that?
Yeah, that's good. That's good. So what is it that we do, Chris? I mean, I've got a candle. If you've got a prayer, I'll meet you in the woods. We're going to meet on Sunday, right?
We are going to meet.
We don't live that far apart anymore. What is, like 90 minutes or something?
Yeah. So we're going to actually be in the forest together a couple days from now. So, and who knows, there might be a candle or two around.
Right. So, what were the different phases, like when it was actually first happening? What did you think when all of a sudden this person in this group that in the original little text you sent me, I didn't know all the background, like that these were like, this was your spiritual meditation community for 15 years. And how did you feel in the moment?
Yeah, great question. In my body, I had that feeling, and the only thing I could compare it to is, as a child, when you do something wrong, and your parents say something, you get that kind of sinking feeling in your chest, in your stomach.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember having that feeling, like, this can't be happening, or it's like I was just completely disoriented.
Yeah.
And then I had that feeling, and then
was that feeling like I did something wrong type of feeling, like I am a bad person, I got caught, I was in the cookie jar,
I must have did something wrong, or I am wrong. And then another feeling came over, which was maybe a little bit harder, is this feeling of embarrassment, that this is happening to me in a group of my friends, very close friends. And I just felt so embarrassed.
Right.
And then, the other thing that happened is, like, my brain just started spinning. Like, what are you going to do? And I remember thinking, if I fight back it's only going to be.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I just felt I made the decision just to take it,
Mm-hmm.
and which didn't feel good. But I felt like that was the shortest distance between what I'm experiencing and getting out of here eventually, right?
Right.
And so that was ultimately, and then like the day, maybe that night is then when the anger started coming
Yeah.
up.
Yeah. What kind of psychological operations did you do to try to take it without reacting?
I think there was some disassociation in that moment.
Mm.
I could
Yeah.
see, I could hear, but it just, I couldn't recall any words today.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I kind of had
Yeah.
just disassociated in that moment.
Right.
That's what I felt like. That's what
Right.
happened. It's like my body took over.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right. Like a survival mode of
Yeah,
like a freeze, fight, flight, or freeze,
right.
and you froze, and then until you could get out of the situation.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Huh. And then were you aware? So you also had a period of like shame or humiliation, you said,
Yes.
where you were aware of like, oh my God, this is happening in public.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I remember one of my, and you know this about me,
Mm-hmm.
is I have this reflex of laughing. I
Mm-hmm.
initially laughed as kind of a just defensive
Right.
reflex.
Right.
And then I saw, no, this is real.
Serious. Yeah.
And,
Right.
the laughter just kind of went away. But
Right.
that's just kind of my normal
Yeah.
reflex.
Yeah. Right.
But I want to tell you something that I learned.
Yeah. What'd you learn?
Well, after all of this happened and again, talking through it with friends and my wife and writing about it, one of the things that came out of it for me that was very helpful,
Mm-hmm.
and as you know, I have been in the position of being able to facilitating a lot of different groups.
Mm-hmm.
And from that experience, it occurred to me that what happened to me could happen
Mm-hmm.
in any group that
Yep.
I facilitated. And so I'm going to say maybe a year after I began, as part of, if I would just begin facilitating a group, I would talk about rules of safety and being together.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that came to me is this idea that we all have access to slow the meeting down.
Yeah.
And the analogy that I use is when I was in Chicago, and you take the bus, and whenever you pull the wire on the
Mm-hmm.
bus, it would stop. But the cool thing about the bus was anybody could pull the wire.
Yeah.
You could be short, you could be tall,
Mm-hmm.
you could be, it didn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone who pulled the wire, that was immediate communication, the bus is going to come to a stop. And so that's the
Mm-hmm.
analogy I
Yeah.
started using. And my hope was that if I didn't catch it, that someone else would, and it would at least slow things down so that it wouldn't escalate into someone getting hurt.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that.
So in that way, I mean, it was a learning process.
Mm-hmm. Like many shitty experiences.
Why is it that way, right?
Yeah, I know. I'm actually just seeing a little bit of the parallel with the piece that I was writing this week and that I sent you about, um, the neurology resident and the neurology attending, feeling like I was in this group with three people who I thought were my healers,
Yeah,
who I thought were on my team and on my side. We're working together to figure out what kind of weird stuff is going on after this immunotherapy adverse reaction, and how I used that adverse reaction almost like it was like a touchstone almost, where like I could make a poem out of that. It might make a better poem than a story, because I feel like I still can't write about this without getting bitter and pessimistic.
yeah, yeah,
And and you commented on that of like, what, that I'm telling people up front it's not going to be a story with a happy ending, and you're saying, well, maybe there is a happy ending. I'm like, well, damn, Chris, you're an optimist on top always, so in the top half of the glass. And that was my pessimism. That's actually the thing that got me thinking about, why do I go into this story saying that there's not going to be a happy ending? And Chris says, you don't know that. Maybe there's going to be, you're not like toxic positivity of saying there's going to be a happy ending. You're just saying you don't know it's going to be a negative ending, pessimistic ending. But anyway, when this all started to go down, I felt strangely like calm. Everything got very focused. I was very grounded, but it was almost like I wasn't responding in the way I would normally respond. I wasn't defensive in the time, and I wasn't angry in the time. And I just remember saying these things to the covering neurology attending who, would mock me in this tone of like, well, it's not like you're going to find some disease that describes every symptom and it's got a name that you can't pronounce. And it's not like you're going to find that you've got dementia. It's not like, all these different things. It was a very dismissive type of thing. And at the time I was like, okay. And then, but when the neurology resident said, when I wouldn't, take the antidepressant they were trying to put me on without what I thought was good justification, when his last comment was, well, and I said, I'm not going to take it. He said, well, good luck with your mood and anxiety symptoms. And I was like, what the, and then he left. And I was like, what the fuck just happened? And then it was true. Like at the time, I was just it was almost like I was an anthropologist all of a sudden in this culture that I didn't understand. And the grounding came, but it was weird. The grounding came before the words came. And so I just kind of trusted that. But then afterwards, I had all these things like, oh, I wish I'd said that, or I wish I said this, or I should send him an article on this, or I should, all these different things. And I felt really betrayed. And I felt like people who were on my side actually viewed me as a problem patient.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, I was othered in a way. And I was no longer Dave Kopaz. I was no longer a psychiatrist who had survived cancer and had immunotherapy and had adverse effects. I was a problem patient. And then I realized anything I did just would confirm that I was a problem patient,
right.
And so there was that sense of that, and there where I was just like, I'm never going back there. I'm never putting myself through that again. But I still have the wound from it, of just this deep, deep hurt and betrayal.
Yeah, I feel that. And it reminds me of the story that I told. It took me a whole year to really decide whether to leave that group. That I did after a year.
Yeah.
But I noticed, and I'm wondering how this will play out with you.
Mm.
When I would go to meetings during that year, I was thinking, I noticed myself saying less, trying to take up less space. And ultimately, that recognition led to the decision that this is a place that I need to leave.
Yeah.
But here's the funny thing. So another 10 years went by, and now I'm working with some of them again.
Oh, yeah. Through your own?
Yeah. I mean, it's and it's different.
Hey, we'll have to talk about this off camera. But is this why when we brought up certain people in the group, you're like, I don't know if we should include them?
In that case,
we'll talk about that.
In that case, no.
Right.
But
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, so you're in the group still, but you're just trying to take up less space. You're less open, and you're not there.
And that's what I did for that year.
Yeah, for that year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I feel that with any doctor now, where I'm like, I don't trust you. Even if you're on my side right now, I'm not going to come in with here's all my I'm not going to try to be a problem solver with you. I'm going to kind of hold back. I'm not going to tell you the symptoms that are weird, that are hard to explain. I'm just going to tell you the symptoms that I think are within your silo and let you just deal with that rather than dealing with my whole
But the hard part the hard part about that is for you and all of us to some degrees, we
Mhm.
hold back ourselves.
Yeah,
We're not able to be our full selves.
right.
And I think that comes with some cost.
Yeah. Yeah, definite cost.
So to go
Mhm.
back to where we started,
Mhm.
and I don't know if this is even a good question, but what is the story? I hear
Mhm.
that story.
Yeah.
What is your story? I mean, what is your candle? What is
Mhm.
your forest with this?
Yeah.
I hear the survival part. I'm just going to come in and I'm going to do this.
Mhm.
And yet there's a part of me that
Yeah.
says, could there be a little bit more?
Yeah. I've got an answer. But first, before we get back to the original story, let's do the other story, the other thing about the scapegoating thing. And when your question was, let's read it here. Let's turn to the book of Chris.
Okay.
Um, uh, However, what cut deeper was that no one in the group intervened. So the question that it raises for me is, when do we intervene? When do we step out of the cultural mores and act? What are the risks of not taking action, stepping up? So I think the risks are, you make yourself small. Sometimes what happens, that dynamic, the aggressor scares everyone else into being silent. And I
Yeah.
think we see that in the political dynamics happening now. Someone is a bully, a name caller, an aggressor, and people are like, I don't want that directed at me. So that's why they sacrifice this person. It reminded me of the story, um, when they came for the Jews. I didn't speak up when they came for the gypsies, when they came for the homosexuals, the scientists, whoever. I didn't speak up, and then when they came for me, there was no
Yeah.
one else to speak up. So that is kind of a parable about why you should speak up, because eventually, when they're scapegoating, the smaller the pool gets, eventually you're the one that's going to get scapegoated. Um, so I just wanted to say, so you asked that question. I was like, I don't know, how are we going to make a podcast out of this? And then Renee Nicole Good was shot in Minneapolis, and is this whole sort of lightning rod of both the left and the right, and these different stories. And, without talking about what's a true story and what's a false story or false narrative, um, all of a sudden I was like, holy cow, that this question that you asked takes on a whole kind of like national reverberation of when do we let somebody be sacrificed as a scapegoat, and when do we stand up, and when do we speak out? And I'm inclined to say, Chris, we're running out of time to answer that question. Let's move back to the easier first question that you asked. What do you think of that? Maybe we'll come back to it in another time, or
Oh, I want to hear what you have to say about it.
oh, I don't have anything to say about that. I've
Yeah.
I've got something to say about your first question
Okay.
about the forest and the candle and the so I think what we should do is end with a meditation that
Yeah.
involves a candle, a forest, guided imagery of a forest, and a prayer. So would you like to lead us in that?
Sure.
Okay.
So just finding a posture that invites relaxation. And for some of us, it could be allowing the shoulders. My shoulders was getting tense after you raised that question. So just
That's
inviting the shoulders and the jaw, and maybe
mm,
that's the point, is in some of
mhm,
these questions that don't have easy answers, maybe the way that we can begin to enter into them is by first working with our bodies. And so maybe inviting the jaw to soften, inviting the shoulders to relax, just inviting the body to just be, allowing the chair or wherever you're supported, the floor, to take on the role of supporting the body. So just working with your own body, and then in your mind's eye, the invitation is to consider a forest or some place in nature that just comes up for you. It's maybe a place where you played as a child. It could be a place you've gone to on vacation. Or in David's case, it could even be in your backyard. So just allowing the image of some place in nature just to arise in your mind's eye. And to the degree that you are able, just allow yourself to be in the presence of nature, wherever that might be for you. Just allow yourself. Maybe as you are in this place, you may hear the sounds of birds, or you may feel the wind on your face, or the sounds of leaves, or the wind blowing through trees. And you could potentially also feel the sun on your body, on your face. And there could be particular smells. It could be the smells of pine or the earth. Just allow yourself to be in this space. And allow this space to be within you. And then in your mind's eye, again, if this is available for you, if this is something that you'd want to include, the invitation is to light a candle. And here in lighting the candle, we're inviting light. We're inviting light to be in our presence. And you can pick a candle that maybe you have at home or a favorite candle, but just allowing that candle to be present as you find yourself in nature. You might even open your eyes and watch the flame as it dances. And maybe there's some part of the flame that you may even feel in your body, the sense of a spark of life and light within us.
The
And
held back place of goodness. I'm sorry, Chris, just to bring back that held back place of goodness again.
yeah. And as we all find ourselves sitting in nature with a candle, with this place of goodness within, just invite a story. What story comes up for you in this particular moment? Or what story might be asking you to remember it? What story comes up? And there may be none, but we're just offering this as an invitation. What is the story? What story might be within you or pertinent in your life in this moment? And it also could be that we may need to visit the forest or the place in nature, maybe more times to hear the story. But it might be available now. And then the invitation is to blow out the candle, to hold the story within, and in your own time, you may leave this place of nature, taking the story with you, and allow it to continue to speak through you. And so you can open your eyes and come back.
Thank you, Chris.
Welcome.
feel like there's a lot of questions, a lot of things we could talk about, but maybe it's good just to end there, huh?
I think it's, yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah.
Allow the questions to live through us.
Hmm. Right. And we'll have a special guest next time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Remember to become a true human. Keep on becoming. Let me figure out. We're on a new platform. I got to figure out how we stop recording here. Oh, there we go. Bye, everyone.